everyone, welcome to the show. My name is Amanda Ostrander. I am a teacher-turned-homeschool mom, and this is Raising A to Z, a place where we talk about all things homeschooling. And recently I've gotten a lot of questions about homeschooling toddlers. I've gotten a couple of people ask me, how do I get homeschooling with my 2-year-old? How can I get my 3-year-old into learning? I've even had family members who've reached out and say, hey, I feel like we're not doing enough. What can we do with my 1-year-old, my 2-year-old, my 18-month-old? So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about what we do when you want to homeschool your toddlers. So, how do you homeschool toddlers? You don't. You don't homeschool toddlers. Toddlers are toddlers. It is not developmentally appropriate to homeschool toddlers. It is not developmentally appropriate to expect toddlers to sit at a table and to do an activity or a worksheet. It's just not psychologically, emotionally, physiologically, developmentally, it is just not appropriate to homeschool toddlers. I know that scares a lot of parents. I understand that we come from a society that has this constant fear of falling behind. And there's also a constant push for kids to be doing more and more and more. And that is very much a societal thing. Science and studies have shown that reading earlier does not make you a better reader. Counting earlier does not make you better at math. All of these things that we are pushing kids to do younger and younger and younger doesn't actually correlate to stronger skills down the road. There's a constant push in our society to have kids do things earlier and younger, and that if they're doing it earlier and younger, that they're going to be better at it. And it's just not true. And I think that also the extra push now is that we see a lot of parents coming in wanting to get their kids ready for like school as well. Like even if you're not homeschooling, this idea of like having your toddler ready for school is also a huge push that you see in a lot of social media, and a lot of teachers are even asking for that. And I think there's a couple things we need to think about when we're talking about school readiness and like learning at home before kids are like school aged. When you see a lot of these teachers who are talking about like school readiness, a lot of them are kindergarten teachers, and a lot of them are American, which means their kindergartners are much older than what the kindergartners that are existing in our area. So we're in Canada, we're in Ontario. Sometimes we have kids going to kindergarten as young as, the late end of age 3 into early age 4. In the States, you're typically going to see kids who are already 5 starting kindergarten, maybe like just about to turn 5. So you still have like there's a whole year difference, if not more, between what you're seeing in the States and what you're seeing in Canada. So there is a big push, and what they're asking for kids in kindergarten to be doing is not necessarily what is appropriate for like a 3-year-old who's starting kindergarten in Canada. So you have to like remember that when you're talking about the scope of like school readiness, what the expectations are. Is this a Canadian expectation? Is it an American expectation? And also, like, being honest, a lot of the expectations that are out there are, quite frankly, a little bit excessive. Like I said, there's a lot of things coming into play here. We have like the societal pressures of doing things earlier means that they're better, which isn't true. We have the societal pressures of we need to get them to do all these things and get them ready for school, which a lot of the times those are not really big deals anyway. And then we also have like this constant fear of falling behind. Like if my kid isn't reading by the time they start kindergarten, are they behind? No, they're not. But then we also have this like idea of like, what do I do with my kids? And I think it's a very North American style of parenting, that we want to do things with our kids. European countries don't necessarily do that. They kind of like the parents go about and do their day, and the kids kind of either play independently or do what the adults are doing. But in North America, we have this very child-centered focus where like we feel like we should be doing things constantly as like direct instruction with our children and teaching them directly. And if that's your style, fine. I'm not going to knock it, but you don't have to. You can definitely like ease back and let them do a lot more play and exploring, especially as toddlers. We just really don't need to be doing those things. There's also the idea that like especially here in Canada, where we have a lot of parents, because we have great maternity leaves, we have parents who are feeling like they have nothing to do with their kids all day. And so they think, oh, well, we could just start homeschooling earlier. And yeah, you still can't do that. You really shouldn't do that. And I have seen a rise in preschool curriculums, and it's curriculums designed for ages 3 and 4, and parents kind of like, hey, should I be doing this? Should I be getting this curriculum? Can I get it and do it with my 2-year-old? Can I do it with my 3-year-old? You can't homeschool your kids when they're toddlers. If they're too young. But maybe you have plans of homeschooling when they're older. Maybe you want to kind of just, you're looking for something to do with them. You thought, well, at least it'd be educational if we did some kind of homeschooling. You're looking for something to do with your kids. What can you do with your kids that is going to be educational and enriching, but that you don't need curriculum for, and that you can focus on and maybe kind of prepare you for like later in life when maybe you are homeschooling? What can you do when they are little? So here's what I did with my kids who are now 5 and 7. Here's what we did. So the first thing you can do, number 1, expose them to as many things and situations as humanly possible. So I know this is very hard kind of post-COVID, especially a lot of these kids have not been in a lot of situations. A lot of them have been isolated because of COVID. So all the more reason to make this a great focus for you guys. So toddlerhood should be all about seeing new things and exploring and doing new things. This is, I'm not just talking about like going places and like exploring the world. I'm not talking about taking your kid to Bali. I'm talking about like, make sure that you've gone to playgrounds and different kinds of parks and gone for walks, nature hikes. Make sure that you've gone to different grocery stores and different kinds of appointments and bookstores and libraries, gone to festivals or fairs. Like, go and do all the things that they would encounter on a regular basis kind of throughout a year. Do all those things, and so that they have met different people, they've been in different situations, go to restaurants, do story times, like do those kinds of things, get them out and seeing all the different kinds of people that are out there, all the different kinds of situations and scenarios they might encounter. And the thing is, you got to do them a lot and do them repeatedly so that it becomes just like a very normal thing for them to do. I have a family member whose kids had never been to the grocery store, because especially the youngest was born in COVID and they had never gone to the grocery store, and it stressed them out so much to go to the grocery store because there were so many options, so many things to see. And they just never took them to the grocery store because it always ended in a tantrum or someone was melting down or it was too stressful. The thing is, if you're looking for things to do with your kids, you kind of want to expose them to things that are different and new. And sometimes that means they're going to melt down. That's okay. That just means that you've taken it as long as you can go. You pull them back into the car and you move on your day. But you want to make sure that you're exposing them to these things so that it becomes like a new normal for them, that it's normal for them to go to these places, meet different people, and that they can learn how to behave in these situations. Don't be afraid if they melt down. That's okay. Parents will know. Sometimes you just need to take them to the side, let them have their meltdown, take them out to the car. My favorite thing was to take them to the bathroom if my kids were having like a major meltdown, because at least we weren't like in front of everybody. We were in a room, kind of isolated. Yes, somebody might be going to the bathroom in the stall next to us, but at least we had like a little bit of privacy to have that meltdown. Fun tip. But yeah, it might be a little stressful, but start small. Start with like, we're going to go to the park for 15 minutes. We're going to go into this store for 15 minutes. And if that's overwhelming, then the next time, just again, say maybe only 10 or 15 minutes. If it goes well, maybe you can push it a little bit longer. Maybe we're going to go browse for 20 minutes. Maybe we're going to go to a restaurant and hopefully not throw our food this time. Like, little steps, baby steps, and expose them to as many things, because these are the years where everything is amazing and magical and wonderful, and it's their first time seeing these things. So that should be like your main focus as a parent, is to expose them to as many things as you possibly can so that they are used to like the world. Number 2, the second thing you can do is set a schedule. This is particularly good for if you are bored or feeling really overwhelmed, like you don't know what to do with your day, and it's even better if you're planning on homeschooling. Like, it works in both situations. I get it. Being at home all day with your kids can get mentally exhausting. It is mentally boring, especially when they're really little and they're wanting to do the same thing again and again. They want to read the same books again and again. They want to watch the same show again and again. They want to do the same thing again and again. And you're just about to like lose it in your brain. I understand. This is a great time to set schedules of daily and weekly. Like, think of them as two different things. So a daily schedule would be simple as like, okay, this is when we eat breakfast, lunch, dinner. This is when we have a quiet time. This is when we're going to do, for example, maybe we're going to like always read a book right before bed. Setting those kind of simple routines helps kids know what to expect and helps them to like kind of give them markers throughout their day. So you can say, okay, lunch is in 10 minutes, and like it helps kind of figure out what you're going to do with your day, so that it's just not when you wake up in the morning overwhelming because you now have a full day to fill. You've already got some markers of things that are going to happen throughout the day. That's very, very helpful. So when you're doing your daily schedule, you're including like your basic things like meals and nap time, but you can also include fun things like your bedtime routines are going to include reading 1 or 2 picture books before bed. Or maybe you're going to include a walk in the morning right after breakfast. Like, those are things that you can include in your day. It gives you kind of like, it takes some of the like, what am I going to do to fill my day out, because you now know this is what happens. And it does help a little bit, because then you're just kind of like moving on of the checklist of what happens next. You're not trying to fill time. The other thing that you can think about that really helped me mentally was like looking at my week and kind of coming up with a schedule for what happens during my week. Weekends, I don't find so bad because my hubby was here and we were able to like do different things and be a little more spontaneous because I had the extra set of hands. But during the week, if you're alone, it can be really hard to like figure out what to do with your toddlers when you know, I was outnumbered. I was by myself. So I had like a weekly schedule of things that I could do that were going to be easy enough for me and didn't require a lot of work for me, but also things that could get me out of the house. So for example, when they were little, I would take them, I found a couple different free programs to do. So you can look for things like library story times. Our French Catholic board did like a French vocabulary playtime thing that we did. My kids loved that for years. We did that. Our church had a play group. So we would go to this play group. It was free. We just had to show up. And they did playtime. There was like a little Bible story time at the end. So that gave me kind of like markers through my week of things that I was doing. So like Monday was Centre de Petit, which was a French group. Wednesday, we went to playgroup. That's what we did. Friday, I saved for like errands. And that was like, if we had to get out of the house and do something, Friday was there. So then it gave me like, okay, I'm getting out of the house 2 or 3 days a week. I didn't feel quite as overwhelming because I didn't have to really do anything for those. So again, look for things like libraries, library story times or toddler times, hubs or Good Start hubs, or like local play groups in your area. Church groups often have things for parents. Check your schools. Even if you're not planning on sending your kids to schools, they might have like a preschool or like early learning kind of program that would be free. Check those things out if you're looking for free things. You can also sign your kids up. I find there's a lot of things for parents to do with their kids, with your toddlers. So like Mommy and Me swim lessons or gymnastics, yoga, like you can do things like that as well. But yeah, so find things that you can kind of give yourself like a marker through your week of like where you're going to go, what you're going to do. And it gives you a place to go. And then here's the nice thing. If we were like, I'm overwhelmed and I'm tired and the kids didn't sleep and I'm miserable, we don't have to go to playgroup. We don't have to go to playgroup. We don't have to go to Centre de Petit especially because there was no cost. That's why I'm a big pusher of like, look for the free things, because then it takes that like extra stress of like, well, I paid for the class. It takes that stress off. You just show up when you show up. You don't show up when you don't show up. Things like that. And it really, really does help. So definitely if you're have toddlers, look at setting a daily schedule and a weekly schedule and figure out where you can do what you can do. That is just going to help give you kind of like markers through your day, your week and your day. And like, it kind of gives you a little bit of a relief of like what you can do. You're not totally overwhelmed of like being at home for 6 days straight by yourself. Number 3, third thing you can do if you have toddlers is to establish quiet time. I know a lot of parents get overwhelmed, especially when their kids start to drop that last nap. Because now what do? Especially when you had that nap, you had a little bit of like a reprieve. So you establish quiet time. And this is going to look different for everybody. But in our house, when they were very young, it was about an hour that they had to stay in one room that I had the monitor and I could kind of watch what was going on. But they had 1 hour in the room. I would help get them out 1 or 2 activities to start. And so, for example, maybe I would pull out puzzles, or maybe I would pull out the blocks, and like those would be the things that were out. The doors closed. They had access to books. They had access to paper with washable markers, because that was the easiest thing to clean up. And they had an hour and they couldn't come out. They could come out if they needed help, but otherwise they were in there. It was kind of their time to play and explore and do something quiet. I tried to use their room that had a bed for the longest, as long as possible. Now my kids are older. They don't play in their bedrooms anymore, but a room that had a bed, because if they were tired, they could lay down and take a nap. But they had access to all kinds of things that were safe for them, that was at their level. But they also had a chance to kind of have some downtime, have some practice at doing something independently, having some free time, but also if they needed a nap, they could take one. And so establishing that as like part of your routine is fantastic, because it gives you as a parent a little bit of a break as well. Either you can take a total break and not do any like housework and just kind of relax, have a cup of coffee or tea, read a book, do whatever you need to do. For me, that became time when I did a lot of work, was during their nap time, or not nap time, quiet time. I did a lot of work during quiet time. And the thing is, once you start small, you can always increase it. So we had a timer, and then eventually my kids got old enough that they didn't use a timer anymore. They used the clock, so they know that at a certain time they can come out. And we still do this. My kids are almost 6 and 8. They're 5 and 7, almost 6 and 8. And we still do quiet time. And we will still continue to do quiet time for as long as I can, because it really is such a mental and emotional time saver for me. And fourth, the last thing you can do if you're really desperate and want to focus on things, practice skills. Practice fine motor skills, gross motor skills, and life skills. So fine motor skills, those could be things that involve like small detailed work. I'm not talking like pencils and drawing and all that. I'm talking like, moving salt around or sand with their fingers. I'm talking like, threading strings, or doing, what are those called? Lacing cards. My kids loved lacing cards. You can look up fine motor skills on Pinterest activities. They have lots of like little things with like pipe cleaners and stuff. Those are the kind of things that you might want to like throw in occasionally, or have one or two a week. Totally do that. Gross motor skills would be things like standing, running, jumping, balancing. Like focus on those. Find some games. Find some the floor is lava, or like freeze tag, or the bear, like different games. You can there's lots of songs that have like motions and movements. Those are great. You can do those. And then when I talk about like self-care skills, I'm talking about you can work on independence towards doing like things that take care of themselves. So combing their hair, which is, if you have daughters with long hair, that's a whole thing. But you can also look at like brushing your teeth, so letting them brush their teeth before you brush their teeth, like getting dressed, putting on their shoes, picking up their toys. You can also focus on like skills like that. And those can be things that you can practice and do. And the reason why you can focus on them is because it takes so long. It takes forever. I'm not going to lie. Letting them get themselves dressed can be like a 35-minute ordeal. If you consider it as an educational experience though, it kind of takes the stress out of it. So that's kind of a thing, because you're like, oh, they're learning. I understand that it's driving me nuts because I could put that shirt on in like literally 4 seconds, but it takes them 15 minutes. It's okay. It's all part of the learning. So focus on those. If you're going to focus on like learning skills, focus on like little fine motor skills, large motor skills, and some like self-care, getting themselves ready and doing some simple things. Those are great things you can work on with your kids that are not necessarily academic, but it makes a huge difference when it comes to doing academic things later on. So yeah, if you have toddlers and you're looking to homeschool them or do something or figure out how to make their lives more educational, these are the 4 things that you can really do that really do make a difference in the long term, even if you just don't understand it now. And it will also help you find a little bit of balance and a little bit of, peace about how you're going to homeschool your kids or how you're going to educate your kids moving forward. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you guys follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok if you have any questions, because this was a question someone asked me recently. I'm happy to answer them, and maybe it'll become a video just like this. So that's where you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.